Binomancy. So I want to explain a brief history of geomancy. Geo means sand or solid earth, while mancy means divination. So coining the two together, when we say geomancy, we mean a method of divination using sand as a means. So in this type of divination, we make use of sand. However, I want us to know that this divination doesn't depend 100% on sand. Sand only happens to be a material, a surface, a medium in order to display the divination. Without sand, we can actually carry out this divination. Having said that, it means this geo is not important in the mancy. So if sand can be disposed of, if we can get rid of sand in this divination method, if we can do the divination without using sand, that means sand is not very important in the divination. So what is now the basis? What is the root of that divination? On what basis, on what foundation does it lie? So it actually lies on the concept of double and single dots. Double and single dots. This is a double dot and this is single dot. So this divination lies on double and single dots. So what is important in this divination method is the use of dots. Understanding the concept of dot system, not sand. We don't have anything to do with the sand. In the olden days, when they don't have paper to write, they don't have means of writing other than sand. Or let us say that because sand happens to be the cheapest material at that time, any other material they want to use will cost them some money. So they resort to the using of sand, and that is why geo is attached to the name. So if we are no longer using sand, then it will be of no use, or it will be erroneous to be referring to this art of divination as geomancy. Somebody who is not using sand cannot be calling the art of divination geomancy. So what else can we call it? Now we go back to the dot system. When we're having double dots and single dots, the minimum we can have is a single dot, and the maximum we can have is a double dot. That can be interpreted to be 0 and 1. So whenever we have a double dot, that is the end. So that comes to 0. And whenever we have a single dot, that is 1. So in a system whereby a counting method or a calculation method is based on 1 and 0, then we say this is a binary system. Binary system. All the digits we have is 1 and 0 in this method of counting, this system of counting. So we refer to it as a binary system. So it will be erroneous to refer to it as geomancy. Now, if it is based on binary, then we can also say that the mancy is actually a binomancy. Bino for binary, the mancy for divination. So that will have been the best name. We refer to it as a binary. So that will have been the best name we can give this art of divination, binomancy. A divination that is based on the concept of binary calculation. So I want us to start sharing the program. Invite your friends, your colleagues, start sharing, invite people all over, even those who are critics. Let them come and listen to this lecture. So, how do we now come across this art of divination? Because there are a lot of art of divinations. We have so many of them. Oneiromancy is there. Hydromancy is there. A lot of them. A lot of them. So we have a lot of the art of divination. Some of them are regarded in Islam as impermissible or forbidden. So we have to treat the permissibility of some of these methods. There is one method that we call astrology. In Arabic, this is called ilmu tanjim. At-tanjim. At-tanjim. Astrology. In astrology, we talk about zodiacs. The zodiac signs, the 12 zodiac signs, and their relativity to human life. How the movement, the motions, the longitude and latitude of planets and stars, how they relate and affect human activities. So we study all this in astrology. And there is an hadith regarding astrology that tries to portray astrology as haram in Islam. Yeah. So, I'm still coming back to that. We also have oneiromancy. We have hydromancy. So those of us who want to learn geomancy, try as much as possible to obtain your handouts. The handouts of Binomancy, book 1 and 2. So, because by next week, if you don't have the handout, you will be lost in class. You will be lost. So, which one do we call oneiromancy? This is Tabir Ru'ya in Arabic. Arabic is not important for learning geomancy. I'm only delving into all this because we need to talk about the permissibility in Islam. Tabir Ru'ya, whereby we use dream. We talk about dream. We interpret dream, translation of dream, and we use it to make the soothsaying. So one of the Sahaba, one of the disciples of Prophet Muhammad, used to interpret dreams, even while being a Muslim. So he has been doing that before he became a Muslim, and even after becoming a Muslim, he was still practicing oneiromancy, and Prophet Muhammad did not forbid that. And who is the person? Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He was very good. He happens to be very good in interpretation of dreams. We have some other people who also do that among the Sahaba, but the most the most renowned out of them is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and we have some Tabi'in who are also experts in this field. In fact, there is one tafsir called Tafsir al-Alam. It is based on dreams interpretation. If you have the capacity, you can get it for yourself. I think it is 2 volumes. Tafsir al-Alam. So if you want to know about dreams interpretation, just get yourself a copy of that. Tafsir al-Alal. I think the author is Ibn Sirin, if I'm not mistaken. I read it about 15 years ago. Very good for dreams interpretation. Now, we also have hydromancy, like I said. All these things that I'm writing, this kind of divination, they have nothing to do with magic. They have nothing to do with superstition. People learn them. Hydromancy is a divination that uses water. They study the movement of an object inside water. Maybe you throw a stone into water. So you now observe the ripples. So they observe the ripples. So and try to make forecasting. So that one is called hydromancy. So we also have Jafro, which is known as cipher. I have been teaching this in some previous classes. If you go to our YouTube page, you see some of training on cipher. And there is a group. We have a Telegram group regarding that. Then we also have Al-Fal. Al-Fal. It is called Al-Fal in Arabic. I've forgotten the English of Al-Fal. So, in order not to waste much of our time, now let's come to Geomancy, now known as Binomancy. A man came to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His name is Muawiyah bin al-Akam as-Sulamiyu. Muawiyah bin al-Akam as-Sulamiyu. He came to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask about things that can be done as a Muslim and things that a Muslim should desist from. He asked about people who visit augurs. These are people who practice augury. In Arabic, known as Ki'ana. He asked about people who visit them. These people, Quran made us to realize that they are associates of jinn. They are associates of, so they are nothing but sorcerers. They can hear the communication of jinns. And probably they can also see the jinns. So the jinns visit them to tell them hidden facts or hidden things. So those people in turn now divulge the information to their clients. So we call them augurs. So he asked about augurs, and the Prophet said, do not, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do not visit them, do not patronize them. Of course, if you patronize them, you may lose the reward of your salat for 40 days. So these are the people who deal with jinn. So he also asked about people who visit geomancers. Then the Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a prophet among the prophets of Allah used to practice geomancy. A prophet of the prophets, kana nabiyyun min al-anbiya'i yakhuttu faman wafaqa khattuhu. In some narrations, faman wafaqa khattuhu fadaka. So a prophet of the prophets used to practice geomancy, and he who matches his geomancy knows the like of his knowledge. So I'm going to write it on the board. I would like to write it on the board. The translation of that hadith. A prophet كان نبي among the prophets من الأنبياء يكتب used to practice geomancy. That is Yakutu. Faman wafaqa khattahu. Now said so, or use and he who matches. That is, he whose geomancy he who matches his geomancy fadaka knows the like of his knowledge. The like of his knowledge. So said Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now let's look at this hadith. Does this hadith mean geomancy is forbidden in Islam? Putting aside all forms of sentiments, hatred, etc. A prophet among the prophets of God used to practice geomancy. That is telling us history. It's taking us back to the history lane. So if you don't know the origin of geomancy, this hadith is telling you that it was taught to mankind by a prophet of God. In fact, historians believe that the archangel Jibril was the one who taught Prophet Adam geomancy. Adam was the first man to learn geomancy from the angel. So they now said, after Adam taught his descendants, people like Seth. Starting from Adam, we have prophet called Seth. In Arabic, Shiz, with Shin. So he taught these descendants of Ish, Seth. Now, from Seth, learned another descendant of that tree, the person of Enoch, Ukunuch in Arabic. Ukunuch. So Enoch is the same thing as Idris in the Quran. The Quran says, وَذِكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِدْرِيسَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا وَرَفَعْنَاهُ مَكَانًا عَلِيًّا. Mention in the book Idris. Mention in the Quran Prophet Idris. إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. He is a trustworthy and a prophet. And we elevated him, elevated him, Makanan Aliyan, to high status. So Okunuk, also known as Idris, also learned the art of geomancy from his ancestors. So from Idris was the one who taught a lot of people. Idris was born in Babylon. Go and read, there's a book. Don't think that this man is just concocting the story. There is a reference to it. Tariq al-Ukama. In Arabic, it is called Tariq al-Ukama. The English is the history of the wise ones. Tariq al-Ukama. So go and read that. That is the reference. So Idris was born in Babylon, in Iraq. So he grew up there. After that, he migrated to Africa, in Egypt, where he also taught a lot of people the art of geomancy. All this happened before the deluge, before the Noachian flood. Noachian flood. The flood that happens during the time of Prophet Noah, which is also known as the deluge. So it happened before that time. So Prophet Idris learned from his geomancy that there's going to be a flood in the nearest future, because it was not the time, it was not yet the time of Prophet Noah. So Noah lived before, Idris lived before Noah, so many years before Noah. So he was doing geomancy one day when he learned that there was going to be a flood that will destroy a lot of nations. So in order that the flood will not destroy many of his instruments and his sciences, so he built the first pyramid in Egypt. He was the one that built the first pyramid in Egypt. Underneath, he hid his scrolls and instrument that he was using. He wrote several books, not using paper. He wrote it on what do you call it? Tablets. And he buried them in the first pyramid in Egypt. Enoch did that. He built the first pyramid in Egypt just to protect his sciences, esoteric sciences. So when we go to Egypt today and we are seeing a lot of pyramids, some of these pyramids were not built for the purpose of tomb. Those people who later came in later years made some pyramids. So before they now thought of building same thing to preserve the tombs of some of their kings, they actually made ancestral pyramids. So one of these ancestral pyramids were built by, some of the ancestral pyramids were built by Prophet Enoch, Idris. Now, Idris, when he reached Egypt, the people of Egypt, they gave him another name. Just as when he was born, he was named Oknok. He was not named Idris. That Idris was given to him by people when they discovered that he loved knowledge, he loved sciences. He made research a lot. So that was why they called him Idris. A vibrant researcher, Idris. So by the time he reached Egypt, they named him Urmus. Urmus. That's the name given to him in Egypt. So from Enoch, he became Hermes. In their own language, they call it Urmus. Urmus. So he taught them in Egypt the art of divination. He spent many of his years in Egypt. Now, don't forget that is Africa here. The Yoruba people also come across this art of divination from Egypt. They learned this art of divination. Or probably in another land of Arabia. So we learned that some of the followers of Prophet Idris later became pagans. They merged idolatry and paganism with what they learned from Idris. Perhaps after many years the prophet had gone. So they merged the concept of idolatry with it. They started slaughtering for their instrument of divination. So that is where Ifa came in. So you now discover that Ifa among the Yorubas used the same figures as the geomantic figures. Same 16 figures. Those are the basic figures. 16 figures as the geomantic figures. The Ifa people have no other source. That's why you cannot see them having historical book that can tell the history and the genesis of what they are practicing. They don't have any record. They have no record. They have no book to show for what they are doing. So they learned the art of divination from either directly from Hermes or from one of the disciples of Hermes. And we can also consider that whenever they talk of Orunmila, it is either the Orunmila is a distortion of the name Urmus, or it is referring to one of the students of Urmus. Now let's look at Orunmila. If we are trying to write Orunmila in Arabic, you are going to write it like this. Orunmila. So look at the key letters there. This, and this. You can see that those are the three letters we found in Urmus. So the Ila that they attached here must have been that they deified him. They turned him to God. Or they see him as an angel. Just as the same way we have Ila ending the name of Jibril and Mika, Il and Isra, Phil and Asara, Il. So it is either that they deified Urmus, seeing him as a god, a deity which must be worshipped posthumous after his death. Just as the same way some religious practitioners started worshipping Isa, the son of Mary, after his disappearance. So the same way, these practitioners must have seen Urmus as a deity, as a god, small letter God, worshipping him, or they see him as an angel. That, oh, how can a person be like this? This must be an angel. An ordinary human being cannot know all this. So the Yoruba people are people that used to be so much attached to superstitious belief. They are the people that will tell you that if rain is falling, when rain is falling, you don't sit down you don't stay at the door entrance. Abi? A lot of superstitious belief. They can even tell you that somebody came from the heaven using shame and he just landed somewhere, and then one end of fowl was now spreading the sand and it one fair, So they have a lot of folktales which they turn to their history. That's the Yoruba people for you. So I was telling somebody that assuming it was in the ancient times, Yoruba people would be worshipping phone ancestors. Hey, he's talking. This must be a god. And they will start worshipping it. In the morning, they will prostrate for it. In the evening, they will even slaughter for it a fowl. So that is to tell you their own nature. Something that doesn't demand worshipping, they worship it. So that is why I said it the other time that Urmus, which is Prophet Idris, is most likely to be the same thing as what they call Orunmila. That is, if Orunmila was actually a human being, and if Orunmila was actually a prophet of God. If ceteris paribus. Now, we have talked a lot about the history and the permissibility of geomancy. I was explaining the habit before going into that. So when the prophet said, a prophet among the prophets, please read it for me. Those of you who have written it, a prophet among the prophets of Allah used to practice what?
Used to practice geomancy.
Geomancy. That one is clear to us now. Yes. We understand how whom the Prophet Muhammad was referring to. Now continue.
And he who matches with geomancy
Whoever matches, whoever intercepts, whosoever's geomancy tallies with the practice of that prophet, Idris' way of casting and divination. Because now we have a very close divination to that of the prophet, which is the Ifa. You can see that Ifa is almost the same. I mean, it shows some similarities to that of the prophet. So can we now say somebody who is practicing Ifa is also practicing what the prophet? So that's why in that hadith, it's now saying whoever that his own practice of that divination matches with that of the prophet, that is not in the side of the idolaters, whose practice doesn't relate to the Ifa people, whose practice doesn't tally with the Ifa people, or rather it goes in the way of that prophet. Okay, now said, and whoever matches the geomancy of the prophet, what's the end?
knows the like of his knowledge.
Knows the like of the knowledge. That is actually practicing the same divination with that of the prophet. So that is it. So that shows that somebody can be practicing something that will look like geomancy, and it is actually forbidden in Islam if it is in the way of the Ifa people. And somebody can be practicing it and will regard it as that of Idris' way, and that will be permissible as far as Islam is concerned. No. Some scholars now said, since it is not possible for anybody to practice it the way that prophet practiced it, then it is forbidden. But the prophet Muhammad did not tell us that it is not possible, because during the time of the prophet, when the man came, now you come here, let us dramatize. You being Muawiyah, come forward. You are the person who comes to me now. You are the person, you come to me to ask questions. You now said you used to visit some people who practice geomancy. You are now asking me that is it good now that you have become what? A Muslim, that can you still be going? And I'll reply you that one of the prophets of God used to do geomancy. So whoever do the geomancy, just like the prophet did it, is the same thing as what the prophet has done. Now, if you leave this place, will you still be going there, yes or no? Some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. Now, if you are saying yes, why? Because the prophet has recognized it. That is it. Now, those who say no, what can you give as a reason? No reason. That means it is left for the person to what? To decide. It is not compulsory. If you like, you cannot force anybody to accept it. If you like, go there. If you like, don't go there. The prophet put it in the middle. And one of the prophets of Allah used to do that. So whoever does, so it means there are people who are actually going there during the lifetime of Muhammad. And those people who are doing it are in existence at that time. So if it is not permissible, if it is totally forbidden, then the prophet wouldn't have even narrate any history regarding that. After all, we have prophets that use jinn. Prophet Sulaiman, he used jinn. Yet the prophet said, anyone who go and visit people who are using jinn, you can see that Al-Quran. Why didn't he narrate that? Oh, Prophet Sulaiman used to associate himself with jinns, and jinns work for him. So it is nothing bad if you go and visit Al-Quran, people who use it. He didn't say that. But why is it that when it now comes to geomancy, it took us back to the history lane and brought back a dead history? history. People don't even know, as at that time, that Prophet Idris practiced that divination. It was after this hadith that people now gave into history. They now went back to history to make research that who was that prophet that Muhammad was referring to. Honestly speaking, there was the history of geomancy has gone. It has no traces as at that time. Some people were doing it fine, but they don't know the history again. So, but by the time Muhammad said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a prophet of Allah used to practice geomancy, that was when people now started going back to history to make research. And which prophet? They now discovered that it was Prophet Idris he was referring to. So why would he be narrating history to us if that science was not relevant again? If geomancy was to be abolished, then he wouldn't be narrating history to us about it. He would just tell the man, don't go there again. Don't go and meet them again. And for your information, a geomancer in Arabic is called Al-Asi. Al-Asi. That's the Arabic for a geomancer. Someone who practices geomancy, not Al-Kain. They call them Asi, which means an observant. A very sharp observer. Someone who observes very fast. So that's the meaning. Sharp observer. That's the Arabic name for geomancer. Not Al-Kain. Not Quran. If you want to argue this or if you need reference for this, go to Sunan Abi Dawud. You see it there. Sunan Abi Dawud. So there is a lot of explanation where that comes from. You can also go to Tafsir Qutubi, Surah Al-Aqaf. Surah Al-Aqaf, verse 4, in Tafsir Qutubi. Go and read it. That verse 4, where Allah said, Aw asaratin min ilimin. Aw asaratin min ilimin. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it is referring to geomancy. The Prophet himself, he said, Aw asaratin min ilimin. Allah was challenging the non-believers, the kuffar, that if they want to prove that there is another God apart from God, there is another God to be worshipped apart from him, then they should go and eat two nibi. They should go and bring something that can prove that there is another God. He now mentioned one of the things that they can use if they want to use, if they want to bring an evidence. He now said, "How asaratim min ilmin." Even if it is geomancy, bring it here. Let us use geomancy to ask who is the right person to, who is the right one to be worshipped, God or your idols. So when he said, "How asaratim min ilmin," read that verse, Surah Al-Aqaf, verse 4. Somebody should look for it and read it for me. Now this is it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أرأيتم. طيب. Read it there.
قل أرأيتم ما تدعون من دون الله أروني ماذا خلقوا من الأرض أم لهم شرك في السماوات ائتوني بكتاب من قبل هذا أو أثارة من علم إن كنتم صادقين.
That is Quran chapter 46, verse 4. So go to Tafsir Qutubi and read what they wrote there. Quran chapter 46, verse 4. Tell them, O Prophet, did you consider those whom you call upon beside Allah? Show me which part of the earth they created. Tell us the country they created, though. Or do they have any share in creating the heavens? Bring to me any scripture earlier than this one, or any vestige of knowledge. That vestige of knowledge Asaratin min ilmin, vestige, which is translated in English Quran as vestige of knowledge. When they asked the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that what does Allah mean by vestige of knowledge, he said, Katoromli, Geomancy. It is Ibn Abbas that narrated the hadith. You will see it in Qurtubi. He said vestige of knowledge, Asaratin min ilmin, is Katoromli, Geomancy. So you can see that Allah refers to geomancy as knowledge. Imo, knowledge. I don't know why people are scared of learning nowadays. We call them, come and learn geomancy for 7 weeks. Some people are shouting, they have started shirk. Oh, don't go there. Why are you scared of knowledge? I don't know why you are scared. Am I the one who wrote this in the Quran? Asaratin min ilmin, vestige of knowledge. And the Prophet said that is geomancy. So when something is knowledge, why are you running away from it? It means you want to die an ignorant, an illiterate. I don't know why some people can be scared to learn. I don't know why some people can be scared to learn. So this is nothing that is attached. Is nothing attached to kufru. It's nothing attached to magic. It is pure knowledge. By the time we start the process now, you see that wow, this is nothing attached to magic or witchcraft or sorcery. It is pure science, pure calculations. Pure science, pure calculations. So we have 10 minutes more. We'll be spending 1 hour. So the next tutorial after today is next week Monday. Let us do a little introduction to geomancy. To practice geomancy, it has nothing to do with learning of Arabic. It's not compulsory one learns Arabic language before he can practice geomancy, no. But what is important is to be very good observer and one who knows some little calculation. So you shouldn't find it difficult to comprehend calculations. If you are scared of anything calculation, then you may have problem in geomancy. So what we start with is we do casting. Is the first step. We have several methods of casting. What do you cast? We cast dots. You write series of dots without counting them. So that is called casting. Casting is the first step. Some people or some scholars say that we should pray before starting. The prayer can include Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Ikhlas, just to seek for Allah's guidance. So that is the religious aspect of it. So, but scientifically, the first step is casting. Now we have also introduced some alternatives. If you don't want to do casting, you can actually ask your querent to do number picking. In a list of 1 to 16. You can ask your queries to pick any 4 numbers, either by random picking or by the rolling of papers, on which numbers from 1 to 16 must have been scribed. That is, you tear paper into 16 pieces, you write numbers in each of the paper from 1 to 16. 1 in a piece of paper, 2 in another one, 3 in another one, 4 in another, 5 in another, 6 in another, till you have 16. So you now fold each of them. Then you ask the person to ask question in the mind, not saying it out. Whatever you want to know about, you put it in your mind, and you pick one after the other. The first one you pick should be noted down, second one should be noted, third one should be noted. So after each pick, you have to return the paper into the set of papers you return before picking the next. So it is an alternative method for casting, because casting may take some time. And we know that nowadays, people are in a hurry. So you have to be developing and evolving faster methods. In fact, this casting of a thing and number picking, you can design it into applications whereby people will just press some button on a phone, and then we have the results. So we are still working on that. So casting or number picking. After the casting, the result of casting will lead us to mother figures. So after the mother figures, we now use the mother figures. We do some addition. No, it's not yet addition. We have to do juxtaposition of figures, then addition of figures. These are the steps involved in a geomantic table. Then we have to know the 16 figures by their names and identifications. The 16 figures by names and identification. It is not compulsory you learn Latin name, Yoruba name, and others. So, but professional geomancers, they try to know all those things. So because for every figure, we have symbols, Latin name, Arabic name, English name, Yoruba name, among others. So I'll write few of them here, so you can read the rest in your handout if you have it. So I have written handout 1 and 2. The name of the handout is Binomancy, the art of binary divination. Let me have yours. Binomancy, the art of binary divination. So if you don't have your own copy, try to get it. So it's PDF. When you buy it, you print it out and do binding. A handout on Geomancy, Binomancy, the art of binary divination, book 1, book 2. So more than 1,000 copies have been sold so far. So if you need a copy of the handout, just reach out to me on my WhatsApp, 0703 492 4039. Please, WhatsApp only. WhatsApp only, I repeat, 0703 492 4039. So the first of all the figures are, I will have to make symbols.
Yes.
So every figure has all this. So a good geomancer should be able to write out the symbols and the binary codes. So you will see all these in your handout when you have one. Which one comes first? That depends on the order you are following, the arrangement. That's what we call order. So like those people who are practicing Ifa, to them, the first figure is Tariq. Yeah. To them, Tariq comes first. So that is the order they are using. You understand? It is an order, it is an arrangement. Just like when somebody says A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Do you get? So it is possible in a particular subject, they tell us that C should come first, then Z should follow. So it is, those things are coding. So it is not fixed that compulsorily this one must come first. No. So, but in one of the orders that we are using, so this is regarded as first figure. I hope it is clear. Please check.
It's clear. It's clear.
Okay. Now let's go to the binary code before coming back to the name. Dot system is ancient. It's an archaic method of writing the figures, the dot system. Just like when you come to chemistry, in the early days, if they want to write, let me say, water, H2O. Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
You know we have two hydrogen in water.
Yes.
Okay. One hydrogen here, another here, then oxygen here. So this one put forward one electron. This one put forward one electron. Are you getting me? So then the oxygen now pairs. Look at the dots. So, but this is how they used to write it then. Dots. But nowadays, instead of the dot, we just write O here, using like this. This is water. Do you get it? So instead of writing dots, so the same thing happens here. So wherever you see a single dot, you write 1. Whenever you see a double dot, you write 0. So the use of numbers, it will make it very easier for calculation. It will make it very easier for digital operation. So how do you want to use dots in a computer for operation? So, but when you turn it to numbers, it will be very easier for calculation. So that's why we introduce the binary codes. So when you are writing the binary codes, you have to start from bottom. You take it from the bottom to the top, not from the top, because in the writing of English or all these numbers, English begins from left to the right. So the top position is actually the right, while the bottom position is actually
The left.
the bottom. Is at the left. Thank you. So the bottom position is at the left, while the top position is at the right. So now we are starting from here, bottom, going to the top. So this is a single dot, we write 1. This is a double dot, we write 0. Another single dot, 1, and another single dot, 1. So this figure is 1011. I am not actually the person who introduced this. It is actually William Gottfried Leibniz. William Leibniz. He was the one who turned the dots into binary codes. So go and read more about Leibniz. The Yoruba people call this irete. The Latin name, Pua. Arabic name can be Kauzaj or Jaudala. Then the English name, that is made. So in the handout, try to correct it in the handout. We have a mix-up of names in the handout. So you try to correct it using your pen. Then, secondly, we have this is in Yoruba. Let's go to the binary code first. Starting from the bottom, that's the left to the right. 0, 0, because double, 1. 0, 0, 0, 1. So you observe that each figure is composed of 4 lines. That is, each line is called a bit. A bit. So we have 4 bits. So there are 4-bit codes. This is called Obara in Yoruba. The Latin name is Lechicia. Arabic name, Adoic. English name, Joy. So, then 3. We have single. That is 1, 1, 0. They call this Osan Yoruba. The Latin name is Draconis. Caput Draconis. Arabic name Atabat Dakila. It has another name, they can also call it Rayat Al-Faro. Then the English name is Head of Dragon. So although this is argued by some of the scholars, but we are not going to that. Number 4. So coding 0100. 0100. This is called Uturupon. And the Latin name Albos. Arabic name Al-Bayad. English white. Number 5. The coding 1101. So that's where we are going to stop tonight. This is called Utura. The Latin name is Puella. Arabic, Naki al-Qad. So you can see the other name in your handout. The English name is Child. So we stop there. So we continue next week Monday, inshallah. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون. السلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.